Hey, I'm Nancy, and I really need to share my story before it's too late. Here's the thing, everyone thinks that I live in a normal, happy family, but the truth is that my family is broken, and it's all because of my sister. You see, Laura is my only sister. We grew up together in a loving home, and we were always best friends. Nothing drew us apart. You're probably wondering what Laura did to cause me this misery. Well, it's a sad story, but please hear me out. Since we became teenagers, Laura and I grew a lot closer. We spent every night in each other's rooms, talking about random stuff and laughing about silly things. She was really fun to hang around with. But for some reason, things took a drastic turn, and Laura started to change in a way I didn't understand. She became a moody person. She got angry at the smallest things I did, like not closing the door behind me and taking a minute longer in the bathroom. She screamed and cried really loud every time we did something she didn't like. On top of that, she treated my parents with scorn, like she had no regard for them. She didn't want to hear us talk or laugh. She never wanted anyone in her room. She cooked her own food and she didn't want to eat with us on the same dinner table. And the list went on and on. Every time I went up to her to confront her or to try and reason with her, she accused me of hurting her, and she always played the victim. I really didn't understand where all that was coming from. Sometimes, when I passed by her room door at night, I would hear her crying her eyes out or sobbing. I felt really bad and alone. My best friend was becoming a shadow of herself. It hurt me. Although she put up an emotional wall between us, I knew she was not happy. She probably wished that one of us knew what was going on with her. Things got really rough, and my parents finally decided that Laura needed to go see a psychologist, someone who could help her deal with the problems she was going through. However, Laura stubbornly refused to visit any therapist. She cussed mom and dad out and spoke terribly ill of them. She claimed that they saw her as the imperfect child, the mentally disturbed kid, and that everything was her fault. Time passed by, and Laura became more and more depressed. She started isolating herself in her room. She would stay there without coming out, not even to eat. She called us horrible, and she repeatedly wished for us to die. Even though I understood she was going through something, her words always got to me. She always said the most hurtful things, but that wasn't the worst part. All hell broke loose when she did something unimaginable. Laura's birthday came up and she left her room because her friend insisted to take her out. Also, our parents thought of doing something nice to show her that they love her. So they went to the mall and bought Laura a really nice laptop. She had wanted a laptop for a long time. Dad placed the laptop on her bed with a card that said, "We love you." He also noticed that the ceiling lamp in her room was broken, and he went ahead and fixed it for her. A couple of hours later, Laura came home from her outing. She went up straight to her room, and suddenly, we heard her screaming hysterically. We went up to see what happened, and Laura was fuming with anger. "How dare you enter my room without my permission?" she screamed. Dad and Mom were taken aback by her reaction. They only wanted to surprise her with a nice gift for her birthday. "You don't know me or know what makes me happy. You are horrible parents, and that is the reason why I'm so miserable. You caused this, and don't fix anything in my room ever again." Laura stormed in her room and shut the door loudly. I looked at my parents, and they were in shock, especially my dad. He started to tear up, which was crazy for me to see. I had never seen my father cry, ever, and I knew he was really hurt by our situation. Seeing that, I had had enough. Laura wasn't going to bully us anymore, and it was about time someone stood up to her and called her out on her BS. Without realizing it, I headed towards her room to barge in, but the door was locked. "Laura, open the door!" I screamed and banged it loudly. After minutes of getting annoyed by my persistence, she opened the door. And there it was, my chance to tell her everything I've been keeping quiet for such a long time. "Who do you think you are, Laura? Who said you can talk like that to our parents? Look at Dad. Look at the tears in his eyes. They are miserable because of you. We are all miserable because of you. We were a happy family until you ruined everything. You are like cancer to us. And if you hadn't been born, we would be much happier right now. I hate you, Laura. My words echoed in the corridor. Laura started crying and shut the door while telling me not to talk to her ever again. That night was very emotional for all of us, and I don't think any of us managed to sleep. The things I said to Laura that night were really hurtful, but they only presented the amount of hurt I was feeling. Days passed since the big fight, and the house got colder and colder. It was so unbearable for me, and I wanted to change that. I wanted to find a solution. We had an aunt who works as a psychiatrist. I reached out to her and told her all about my sister. I told her what had been happening and how I felt about everything. My aunt listened carefully, and then she asked if I could convince Laura to come see her. She explained that Laura probably had a borderline personality disorder that causes her to have unstable relationships with other people, an unstable sense of self, and unstable emotions. She also explained that Laura struggles with a fear of abandonment and even feelings of emptiness and being unloved. As we talked, I started to make sense of the pattern we had been experiencing with Laura. The picture started to make sense to me. After the call, I was determined to get Laura to see our aunt, so I texted her, "Hey, Laura, I'm really sorry for all the hurtful words I said to you on your birthday. I should have been more considerate, and I want to make it up to you. Please forgive me. I love you. XOXOX." Beep! I waited for my sister to text me back, but she never did. Even though I was frustrated with the situation, I knew I had to make things right. So later that day, I went to see her in her room. I refused to leave, and I stood there until she opened the door. I knew that she was confused, and there were some things that she didn't understand about herself. I explained to her what our aunt had said, and the more I told her about it, the more she seemed to open up and say what she was feeling. I told her she had to see a psychiatrist and get a proper diagnosis, and I reassured her that it doesn't make her less of a person. It's just that we all need help at times. Eventually, we got along, and Laura agreed to get some help. To say the least, it hasn't been an easy road, but I try to be positive. I try to hold on to the hope that things will eventually get better with my sister, that our family will be normal once again.